Okay. Okay, so I've just started the recording for the meeting, and I'm going to throw it to Grant and Silver, and they're going to talk about a CAD project that we're going to try to work on tonight. So let's do it.
All right. Hello. I'll start this off. So we are going to be starting a project where we're going to be making an off-season operator console. So those of you who've been at build meetings or saw the demonstration of the robot, there was a box that had a lot of buttons, and we're looking to improve it, whether that be a redesign or just minor upgrades. I'm going to screen share, and we made a little presentation on it. So this is a console project where we're going to be making a new system of the second set of hands that controls the robot. So what is an operator console? There are many different takes on it. There's anywhere from these old boxes of wood that have switches all over them to something as modern as two laptops with what seem to be flight controllers. And there are different teams like Epsilon Deltas. I believe that's their name. There's Highlander Robotics. There's Cheesy Poofs. They all have their own approaches, and we have ours here. And I'll hand it over to Grant to talk about all that.
Yeah, so this is ours. So this year we had a full design there. It was all made out of polycarb. They were kind of like a big puzzle piece. They're all kind of webbed in together, and then they had those little 3D printed bolt blocks that went in the corners, so you can bolt it all in. That's what kept them from sliding out. So it had a space on the left for the laptop. Then it had a space on the right for the buttons, and because of our cart constraints, we actually had it fold in so that we can have more room to put buttons down. So you can change the slide. Yep. So here's some places where it went wrong. So the cables were often left plugged in during transport. And I'm going to say like this was more of a design flaw than a human error flaw. Like there should be something on there that makes it more obvious that there are cables plugged in still before you move it. So in the old one, in the very front, there were two USB ports originally where the controller for the drive controller be plugged in. So during transport, when it was folded up and being carried, that plug would still be plugged in. That caused the handler to actually trip on the plug and actually like break the port quite a few times. So that was not good. Carrying straps often broke. This is a big thing. They were really an afterthought. So when we make a new one, it's important to add in design for handles or some type of carrying strap or really any type of way to make it easily carryable that's more durable than the thing we had before. Now, it also had a bulky wiring harness, and that caused some jams when we tried to put it in the cart, made it a bit wider, so we didn't actually fit in the cart perfectly. And this was just because it had the full design. And again, the wiring was an afterthought. So the actual cable management was not done very well. We do have some ideas for that later, but we'll go into a bit later. The charge port was the wrong spec. And this led to a different one being used. So it was different mount, which led to a poor mount, and it ultimately caused it to break. The monitor wasn't, the wire coming out of it wasn't managed out very well. So what ended up happening there is for transport, there was a tube that it would be mounted on, and that tube would be taken out. So it would be upright and it can lay flat. But when it was laid flat, there's just a big cable just hanging out. And what happened was that got yanked and pulled, and that broke the port on the monitor. So now we couldn't use the monitor anymore. So it's important that we can fix that in the next one. There was also a large space between the actual bolt blocks that kept everything mounted together. And that caused the polycarb to actually sag down because it was too flimsy. So that is something we need to pay attention to more, is just where we're mounting and holding everything together. And finally, there is nowhere to store the controller wire. So that kind of goes into the first one. Cables were left plugged in. If it was unplugged, there was no good place to put them while you're carrying it. So that is something to add on to the next one. So here's some things of what I did right. We do like the foldable design. It doesn't have to be foldable, but really maximizing your button space while still fitting in your cart. That was a good. One power source. So this is another good one. You only had one plug to deal with. You didn't have to plug in a whole bunch of different things. This is very important for the driver stations because there's only one outlet at your driver station. It held the laptop down. We didn't have any drops of the laptop throughout the whole season, so that was good. It could easily be carried when the straps actually worked. That was also very helpful. I know before it was a pain to carry. You always want to put it down. The one before this that actually led to the controller falling off the cart and breaking. So the addition of straps was definitely helpful. So we definitely want to keep that up, make sure it's comfortable to carry. Printed graphics, those are very helpful for actually like labeling each button. And we did get a lot of compliments because of it. That kind of goes into the last point there. And it had a mount for the controller. So once you actually have your controller out, you're gonna have to carry that too. And usually it's the same person. So they had a clip on the top. Once it folded in, you can just clip in the controller. And then it can be carried away too.
All right. So there's a few constraints and things that we have to keep with our design that are requirements. So you want to keep it roughly the same size, where it's 28 inches wide by 11 inches deep, 5 inches tall. It doesn't necessarily have to be 5 inches tall though. For the interface, we want at least 4 switches, 12 buttons, a joystick, a speaker or buzzer, and LEDs that are on a switch to control them and have them on or off and have them as indicators. We also want it to be able to hold the laptop like last time, have a more secure mount for the microcontroller where it will not have to just be floating in the middle of the button box. A modern mount with wire management for transport so that we can safely put it down and not worry about wires being yanked, as well as a place to store it within the box so that everything can be that much more compact. We want all of our ports to have LEDs with power indication. We want wire routing, a drive controller mounts similar to last season's. We want to make sure that we have sticker placement available just because stickers are our thing. And we want it to be comfortable to carry.
So a couple things to add there for the LEDs in the buzzer specifically. So what we're thinking too is that we're going to be able to add onboard diagnostics. So what we're thinking of for the next year's robot, or really future robots in general, I guess, is to have simpler sensors that work together with the more complicated sensors and that can actually detect failure. So in the case of a swerve drive, if we detect that the swerve drive is no longer aligned, they would zero to a point using just like a simple mag sense, and it'll become a tank drive. Now, there has to be some way to indicate to the driver that you just changed your drive system from a swerve to a tank drive. And so that's a way to do it, is using an indicator LED and a alarm sounding from a piezo buzzer, because you actually hear those on the field, even though you can't really hear too many speakers. You can hear a blaring, a beeping coming out from a close distance. And I know that from hearing controller alarms going off during matches. So that's why the LEDs are there. Now on the left, the user interface, the on a switch part comes from just like general, just like fun LEDs, just having them light up and being able to turn that on and off. So they're kind of two different things, but
kind of turn it into a rave party. So we have some options on what we're going to do next. So we could completely like scrap the old design and start brand new with the constraints in mind. We can basically just make a whole new box. We could also do something similar where we base it off of the old one, where we keep a lot of the aspects, but we like kind of restart. It's kind of like a fresh start with some updates to the box. We could do major changes to the old one where we keep the same parts, but add in more features. For example, the monitor storage, the buzzer, the mounts for the microcontroller, things like that. Or we could do updates with minor changes of just like the most needed and like little things that could do better. For example, the straps and the ports. So here I'd like us to discuss like what's the best option we could do. What are some ideas we have on like where to go from here?
Yeah, so I don't know. Do people want to make something completely new? Do we like some things from the last one? Do we want to work in the last document? I don't know. What are some people thinking? Brad, I saw you put your thing down there. Do you have something to say?
Well, so first I wanted to, remind people that the last drive station, the one that we used last year, for everyone's knowledge, Grant did that in like a weekend in between some of the build meetings near the end of the year. We had talked about it earlier, so there was some legwork already done, but you did a really good job with that one. So for all the issues we found, it was awesome, and we did get a ton of compliments on it. So
It was an incredible button box.
ton to be proud of with Rev 1. With Rev 2, or whichever way we go with it, it's Rev 2 kind of regardless of which approach here. My only thought, so it was labeled as a constraint here, is on the size. Is 28 what we have it as now?
Yes.
28 is without the wire. If it's without the wire, it will fit comfortably inside the cart.
So yeah, I guess that's maybe part of the discussion is do we make it so that it fits inside the cart all the way? Or do we make it so that like the wheelbase actually goes 28? So that way it would sit fully on top there. That way you could also open it up when we're back in the pit. That was my only thought. I saw it as a constraint, so I think it's more of a discussion point still.
Yeah, I would like it to, I mean, my personal, I never really, I don't think I picked it up once, so I can't really say, but my general impression was it was always kind of like a halfway. Is it really balanced up on there right when you're closed and when you're open? There were like two different, I would like to spend some time to make it be like, when it's there, it's not precarious, right? When it's open and when it's closed, it's like, it fits, it's in the right spot. You can tell it's in the right spot. And if the cart starts moving, it doesn't, it's not like, you're not like balancing rocks on top
sliding
of
around.
Yeah, that's one thing. I would also like to say, if we have a folding thing, rather than having like 15,000 wires going from one side to the other, would it be smart to have like a second Arduino up there and have some sort of serial protocol, so we only have like 6 wires or some small amount of signal wires or something, so that we don't end up having to have this big bundle that we're dealing with. That's a thought.
So Trevor and I are actually talking about that. So a couple of things we could do. Now, I'm not exactly sure how many wires we need. I guess this will dictate what we do there with that, whether we go with the second Arduino or just keep the same one. But he was saying like use like a ribbon cable instead. So and put it like right on the hinge, so that it would follow up to the hinge, and then it would just pivot up like that. And so now that gap is still empty. So you have none of that wiring harness. It just goes right up against the hinge. And so you end up with like a shape like that.
That's
like a bell curve.
What I want is to not have the problem we had. So if we can get it, another Arduino is just another thing that could end up having a problem, and maybe it's a delay, and it might only be a few milliseconds, but if it's perceivable by the user, then whatever. So yeah, if you guys have thought about it, that sounds great. So okay, what do the students think? Noah, Max, Leah, say something. Leela, sorry, again.
Personally, I think we could probably go somewhere between like a completely new one and basing it off of the old one. Like we can keep like the foldable part, we can keep the overall layout of like where things are, not the button placement, but like the laptop's on the left, it folds out to the right, that kind of thing. We can keep those basic things and have the plug-in port be on the left, all of that. We can keep like basic things from the original, but like kind of evolve it into a new thing that has more in one area, and it's just better. For lack of a better word, it's just better.
So I might be a bit biased because I made the first one, so I might be want to keep it a bit more. But I'm kind of between the base off the old one and the major changes to the old one, just so we can get everything. If you go back to the constraints, like there's like especially like adding places for LEDs, we'd probably want some other thing coming up to actually show that, like separate from the buttons, so you don't have to look
Definitely.
straight down. I think most of it can be salvageable, but I don't know. There might be more work than we think. So I don't think it's going to be a few small changes. I think it would have to be like some major changes at the very least.
Do you have the old one catted up?
I do. Yep.
Can you share it? Let's look at it.
Yep.
I'm not that familiar with how it's all gone together, so.
Okay.
I can pull that up.
Oh, so that's it. That's the folding part. This is the current one. There is also a modular version, but it did break in the rush to get this one out. I didn't configure all of the features, so see some of them are a little moved. But if you look on the one on the right, I think for the most part it's still there. So you have those little sockets of different buttons and switches that would plug in. But anyways, I think if you go to the frame part studio, the frame was all made in one part studio like that. And then the pieces were placed in the assembly along with some of the other components.
Yeah. So there's a lot of promising things involved here that I definitely think we can build on and base off of. It's like we can keep the way that the side panels like interlock with each other, and we can keep the way that it folds out with some modification for the ribbon cables or whatever we choose. And it seems to be very promising in design, like as a base, and we can add to it with whatever we see fit, really.
Right. So if we're gonna be just like editing singular pieces, I think it'll be really easy to do. If we're actually changing dimensions of things, I can't remember how well I set this up and constrain things. This was like the first, I think, like big project I did. I think I did change before and it did work for the most part. It is pretty simple, but there might be some things that break along the way. So I guess as long as we're not changing too many big dimensions, I think it should be pretty easy to move stuff around. I guess again, it really depends on what where we want to add things, how we want to add things, just that in general. So maybe we should like go down the list and kind of talk about like what exactly we should do.
Definitely. So let's go back here. So we've got some steps that we can go through, like the basic shape, button layout, and assigning jobs for who's going to do what. But I think what we want to start with is the constraints and like what can we do from here? Like what do we have that we can play with? What sort of things can we mess around with, see what works best, see what feels right, all of that. So if anyone has any ideas on like what we could change or maybe what to add to this list, feel free to just blurt them out.
So before we get into the details of this project, I guess I would like, so do I have the entire group here? Let me just do, I'm trying to figure out who's all here. So we have Owen, Max, Noah, Leela, Grant, and Silver. Is that everybody? Somebody give me a thumbs up if I've missed
believe so.
anybody. Okay, so people who are not Silver and Grant, who are really into the details of this, what do you think about this as a project for the CAD team to work on between now and kickoff? Okay, you got 2 thumbs up. Noah's
Great
generally
project.
shaking. Okay. All right. So Max, where are you at?
Great project.
And Owen?
Can you hear me?
Now I can hear someone. No, we can't hear anybody.
Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting my mic, but what did you say?
I'm asking you about, like, what do you think about this as a project for the CAD team to take on? So as between now and the kickoff.
I think that this would be a great project because I mean, we're always gonna need like a button box and a drive station. So if like we learn this, or like freshmen learn this, or sophomores, we'll like have it for the next years. Like this is gonna be beneficial.
Okay. That's a
So
good
Owen,
point.
as the person who like carried it before, where did I miss any of the downfalls of the old one? Like, was there anything that you particularly like wanted added to this, or?
Mainly I feel like we just have to like fix the straps. Like if we can like if we find like a better way to hook on the straps so they don't like there's like no chance of them breaking, which risks the button box dropping. That's pretty much a good idea. And I'd say like, yeah, we need a, I mean, it was my fault for like stepping on stuff and like kind of tripping, but we should probably make the cables safer.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's with the ports with the LEDs to show power.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
hoping that like if there's like some kind of indicator light on them, you can be like, oh, I left that plugged in. But yeah. Anyways, that's really for the
Yeah, I
purpose
agree
of
with you on that.
yeah.
Yeah, can you
some
go
way
back?
to find.
Yeah, I'm not sure how we can do this, but I'd like to understand what each of these, like, do you guys have sort of like a plan for, okay, this is what the problem was, and this is how maybe a general rule, a general thing, because I think what we're gonna need is we're gonna have to lean on Grant and Silver, maybe Owen as subject matter experts in terms of like saying, I need and then give us something that we can go to, because like I wouldn't know how to start CADing anything because I don't really understand the problems yet. But if you told me, okay, you need to fit, here's the button, and we get a link to the button, and here we have to make a little 4x something box that holds them, then I think we could, I could start working on it. I don't have to understand all of the subtleties of what the button box needed to do, but it has to be down to like a set of things that are like tasks that people can take on. That's a good point. Like, how are we going to manage this? Like, we should maybe run this a little bit like it's the first team. Like maybe we end up making together a spreadsheet with tasks written on it, and then who's doing
actually
it.
a good segue into so we have the steps for like assigning jobs with like the side plates, button plates, and ports. This is where we would discuss like what's the best place for this button to be, and we can figure out like basic like configurations, and we can edit it in the future of like, oh well, this would actually, looking back, this would be better here, and we can kind of do revisions. So I have a basic layout of like buttons and like group them together, like all the climb buttons together, all of the like feed system buttons together, that sort of thing.
So one thing just to kind of keep in mind for this project, and Owen kind of really hit it with this, is right. This is something we're building for a future robot and hopefully future robots that we don't know yet. And I did really like that graphic layout then with kind of having the buttons on, the button on the chamber, control the chamber. Makes it really simple and easy for anyone. Is that something we're going to strive to do again? And if so, what does that mean for our button layout work?
So I think we should try and do that again. And in that case, we may want to have like it ready to be edited so that it's like we can say, oh, this is the way that the robot is kind of designed this time. Let's position the buttons to be here and here, and we can kind of work it around that. So we can like recut one plate and swap it out, and it'll be quick and easy rather than having to completely remake the box. We can kind of just put on a new plate with a different graphic and move the buttons around, maybe reassign them if absolutely needed, and call it a day.
Yeah, so the way Trevor and I were kind of discussing it was, I think the plan is to make something to work on during the off seasons that he can reprogram the Arduino a bit better, and kind of configure the wiring a bit better too, like manage those, and maybe test out techniques we would use on the actual robot, like raceways on the inside. And then for the actual season, take those out and replace whatever plate has all the buttons and switches mounted. So that plate should be very configurable, able to have that sheet that goes onto it. We're thinking about printing it out in vinyl, sticking it on, and then cutting it out after it's stuck on, so you don't have to do any like processing after. It just gets cut on the CNC, like the paper that comes with it.
What would you think about, could you go back, Silver, to the CAD where you had it all open? I'm wondering about, do we want to have, when you talk about raceways, can you go to the fully assembly so you could show it open? Like, do you think that we ought to make like this bottom plate here, make it be like a grid of standard screw holes so that we could, when we get new raceways, we could just, we could tap all those holes and then we could just put whatever we want. We could have raceways wherever you want them. Everything just is like we did with our parts, but like our beams, where we put these things on 1-inch centers. Maybe we could design in some sort of a grid of holes on this bottom plate that would work for like holding down all your wires and all of that, and you do the same on this other bottom plate so that when you take the top off, everything is kind of like all the wires are all in their proper raceways and all of that. Anyway,
That actually is a really good idea.
No, we were kind of, that is a good point. We didn't think about like the actually bolting them in. We're trying to think would like more have a clip-in design, something that would just like reach down and have like a flexible hook, if you will, and kind of clip into the polycarb like the turret did. I don't know if that's
I'm wondering what if we did this, right? What if we had like you've got the button. This is the button that you guys install in it. It has the wires on it and all of that come down. And it bolts to the bottom plate. This thing bolts to the bottom plate here. And then your cover just goes over the top of it. So when you need to work on it, you can just pull the cover off and you got access to all of your wires and everything, right? But they're not connected to it, so we print out little switch holders, and all of them and light holders and everything. And then we could make this top plate, but nothing is really mounted to it so that it works out to be something easy to pull on and off.
Oh, so anyway, the same grid that you would use to mount those can mount the wire
could now mount switches, could mount whatever it is, whatever we want to do. You end up making like various things like, okay, I need a joystick holder, so now I get a joystick holder, right? Then I make a holder for my joystick holder, and then I bolt that thing to the bottom. Anyway, something like that, maybe, where we can make it so you could pull things off pretty easily. When you want to add a new button, a new hole, all you'd have to do is just cut a new hole in the right spot. Even if you couldn't get it back on the CNC, you could just eyeball it, and it wouldn't matter if it wasn't super close, because the business end is all held by something else. Anyway, it's a thought. I'm not saying that's the direction we should go, but maybe that's something people can think about as a way of keeping, the ability to have it be modular, but also modifiable. So, okay.
Yeah, 100%.
I thought this hinge was a little bit like, I don't like having like one hinge. It'd be nice if we could have like maybe two smaller hinges or something so that it's a little
Did
more
we
stable.
change it to two? Hold on, I think we may have changed it.
It
to
was
two.
one large one. It wasn't
Yeah.
too small, but yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
it just felt a little, it felt a little less secure than,
Yeah, no, you're
Yeah, I
right.
agree. We could
Ideal.
definitely
Yeah.
kind of switch it to two. And then in fact, we could have the two and then have the ribbon cable in the middle.
Maybe, yeah, and that, yeah, that would maybe be right. That, so it's going through the same pivot, but it doesn't have to actually work around the hinge pin or something. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So can you guys point to other things that were problems? I don't really understand all of the problems. So when you say things, I don't really understand. Like, where did the straps connect to? And
So-
what do you, where should they connect? What should we do differently?
The straps, before they were ratchet straps that were taken off. A hole was drilled into them, and then I think, what was it, a bolt, Brad? And then I know you
They-
added something to it later.
No, yes, they were, well, the first one was a hole with a bolt, and then we actually went and, put a grommet onto them. What ended up working best was a hole and then melting the hole to get like a solid, more like solid edge to get rid of all frays. That's what we have right now. That's working okay, but still fails over time.
I wonder if we should do something where you end up having the strap go into a slot. Like here is the, this is the polycarb here. And then, up here, you make kind of a knot or you fold it over itself 3 times and stick a bolt through the whole thing. And, now it just can't come out of the slot, something like that, maybe. Instead of, I think what you guys are doing is you're actually kind of like trying to put it through the thread itself and bolt it up to something instead of trying to stick it through like a mail hole slot. Do you guys, you kind of understand the concept? Anyway, yeah, okay, so that's a problem we can think about. All right, so now we understand that one. What about charge port? I don't understand this charge port wrong spec. What does that mean?
Okay, so there's different types of cable ports, I guess you can buy. The one that was designed into this was one that you can't actually get with a 110-volt plug on the other side. So we basically used a different type of port that Brad was able to get a cable from his work. And it was mounted, instead of like nice and flush on the outside with the proper bolts and all that, it was mounted like from the inside and held in poorly. So what ended up happening was, over time, from just being plugged in and out and from the plug kind of moving back and forth like that, it ended up cracking and splitting the entire port because it wasn't well supported. So it just broke the port.
So this is just a matter of getting the right part and designing around the right part.
Pretty
Is
much.
that what you mean?
Yeah,
Okay.
or really picking the a durable port as well, not like a
And this is the 110. This is the thing that somehow we were charging the laptop was getting its power from this, and the Arduino was getting its power from this.
Yep, everything.
Okay. Monitor wire was not properly managed. So can you speak to that a little bit? I don't even know what the monitor really looked like. So can you?
So it was a silver. Actually, if you want to go back to the CAD.
I don't know if the CAD has it.
All right, so hold right there. All right, I'm gonna try to annotate. Let's see.
Let's
Can
do
I
it.
do it? All right, I found the button.
You click on a color, and then you click on the draw, and you pick one of the squiggly lines. And then your cursor will turn into
Okay.
a pen.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
so colors there. Okay, cool. So right there is where the monitor went in. It was a pole that would come up like that.
I see.
It
Okay.
was just a aluminum pole, and then it had something that would go inside, and then the monitor would sit up here like that. But then the wire would
Okay.
just kind of droop like that and get sucked in there. So when you wanted to transport it, you just pull that out and it would just lay flat like that. Right now you have your screen going out this way. But then the wire was just doing that. So what ended up happening is, I think it might have been in the upright position. This wire got caught by something and it just pulled it straight out and it just jacked up this port. So it just messed everything up.
So do you
so-
think the solution to this is that we should design a 3D printed part to kind of make the wire follow and hold it and strain relief it, or is it get a
Right,
different
it should be
monitor?
strain
What is
relieved.
the answer?
It should be strain relieved probably, but also done in a way so that when it's in both positions, the upright and the folded down, it's well managed.
Okay. And is that salvageable in the form factor we're talking about? So we're gonna, I think, are we gonna skinny this thing up a little bit? Are we going to do, is it essentially the right size, but it should be a half-inch narrower or something? What would you, if you were to look at this and say, we're gonna make a new one, but we're going to, do modifications, what would it, what dimensions does it have to get to? And then can you see a way forward to have this monitor management scheme you're talking about work?
Yeah, I mean, I think the actual mount for the monitor was pretty good, unless we want it to like actually be on a hinge. Because it's really like we put it up for the competition and it just stays there. So really it's just when it's like transferring between events. But when it was, the wire was just like so loose when it was out. And even like when it was upright, we had a zip tie on it. So it was kind of tight when it was upright, but then the loose position, everything was all loose and it just could just like fall off. So at the very least, if there's like kind of like the clip, I don't, Silver, do you want to close it? Kind of like the clip for the controller, maybe there's a clip for this as well. And so it would kind of click in and then something for the wire to be kind of clicked in as well. Because again, we will have time to do this because this is like pre-event and post-event.
Okay. All right, were you happy with this little, the thing that Silver was just showing us, the little clip? Was that sufficient, or do we need something different, more secure, different, or I don't know?
Oh, I think it worked great. I think there was like a little corner that chipped, but I think for the most part, it just worked. Owen, you did a lot more clipping than I did. How'd you like it?
So the clipping is like great, but I noticed that like I don't know when it happened. At one point, like the back part, a little bit of it snapped off, but it's still clipped in since it was so long, which that was the good part of it.
Okay, all right, so we keep that. What other problems are we trying to solve here?
Do you want to go back to the presentation? Right. So it would also sag down. The bottom polycarb, the very bottom plate would kind of pinch in because there's nothing keeping it up. The bolt blocks are all in the corners, so the very middle
Okay.
was sagged down. So
that's pretty straightforward. We can just add
Yeah.
more of them, right?
Right.
Okay, good.
And then nowhere to store the controller wire. That was when the FR Sky was clipped in and the wire was unplugged, there was actually nowhere to put it. Like we could slip it down the slot, but then it was like it had the chance of falling all the way in and you had to like reach and pull it out, or it, could always fall out. So there's no real like space to.
So do you
hold
want to
it in
have
somewhere.
like one of those things where you can do like you wrap it around like it's some forks, like you wrap it, or do you want to have a little
I have
box
an
to
idea
throw it
with
into?
that.
What do people want?
So
I
I
know-
was thinking we should have one of those retractable USBs where it's on a spring. You can so you pull it out and it'll lock, and you pull it out a little bit more, and then it'll kind of just suck itself back in.
I love this. If we have
It works.
if we have one that we have in mind, let's do that. What do
It
other
works kind
people
of like the
think?
seatbelt works, where like it rolls
Yeah.
back up into a hidden part, and you can just pull it out and it's there.
I am a little bit worried if it gets bumped and then it gets pulled in during a match and then unplugs the controller. Because the FR Skies ports aren't the most.
Well,
the turn
then
relief
we
isn't the
could
best.
probably have some sort of like manual lock where like we put a little, I don't know, like a bolt or something in it that'll just keep it stuck.
Or
Just
can-
remember
yeah.
though, every action you give, that's an action that someone has to do many times a competition when everyone's cheering, hooting and hollering, and they're just trying to get the robot set up. The more steps you give the person that's setting up a console, the more things that can go wrong.
That's true.
Yeah, I'm not following though. What is your argument for doing silvers seems simpler, right? Instead of having to find where'd the dang wire go, it's always where it belongs. You just pull it out. But Brad, it sounded like you were arguing against it, so I'm not sure I understood your point
The
exactly.
problem would be like if it got pulled in the middle of a competition, it could get ripped out of the port and we would
Mhm.
lose our controller halfway through, which I
see,
agree
yeah.
is a very real possibility and a big concern. So perhaps there's another way we could go. For example, like the forks that we just wrap it around.
Mhm. Grant, what do you think about? You were at some point, I think, contemplating redesigning the holder, the case for your whatever the fancy controller.
Oh, yeah.
If we redesign the case, we could have it when you plug in the USB port, like you flip a whatever and it's like there, it's contained or something.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, if we had that, I think that would kind of serve it because if you're locking it in, like it can't come out. I mean, that is adding an extra step.
But it's less of an
But-
extra step than putting like a bolt through the like wind up part and rather just flipping something into place.
Yeah. I mean, alternatively, maybe we could make like, you know, like you toggle a thing and you could, like something, yeah, instead of having a bolt, you throw a lever and it like holds it, pinches it. Like you throw a lever and it pinches this thing. You open the
Yeah.
lever and now you can pull it in and out, and it's just something that's baked into the designer. There's no pieces to lose. It's just there. But
Do you think
it's,
that might wear the cable down over time?
I doubt
I
it.
think we'd have to make it be something that would be like a nice, yeah, that would pinch it but not kink it. I think we could figure it out. I think so.
It's like some kind of like flexible material, just to kind of.
Yeah. I think the idea of having it be retractable, if it's retractable and it also has the data that like it's whatever certified at a certain data rate, that seems pretty cool to me. But you know, maybe we try it and we see if we like it. If we don't, we don't use it.
Sounds good to me.
How expensive are these things?
Let's find out.
Yeah, I do also just want to have us keep in mind our schedule. We got a few weeks here if we want to design and manufacture and wire.
Yep.
Let's see. What's this? I don't trust that. That's
Yeah,
way too
the
big.
ones that come out from the two sides are also not that great because we aren't going to be pulling from both sides. We're only going to be
Right.
pulling.
Yeah, these are all like multi. Oh, this would work too. Like a coiled cable.
I think that might have like all of the drawbacks, but none of the benefits, where it's still pulling on the port,
Yeah.
and you can still trip on it.
Yeah,
Right,
that's,
it only,
that's a
like,
good
halfway
point.
retracts.
All right. Well, we can.
There's
maybe
always
we
the
take
option
that.
of making our own, because I've seen plenty of files online and like videos of like people who have made their own like retractable plug, and it has data, it has all the things, and it pulls from one side and it just undoes itself, and then it just pulls back in.
Yeah, that might be. Maybe it's maybe something we can put as one of our projects is find explore. I mean, that's part of the CAD is you have to design. You have to decide what it is you're designing and propose it to the team, and then come back and okay. So is that basically all of the features then? We've talked about? Well, cables were often left unplugged or plugged in during transport. I'm not sure what that means exactly.
That kind of adds to like the tripping over cables where like, so originally we had the USB plugs on the front here.
Mhm,
And what
mhm.
ended up happening was the controller was plugged into that, but it was left plugged in. So as it was being carried, the cable was stepped on and just torn out of the port, and it took some of the
I
port
see.
with it.
Okay,
So
so if
some of this was
we
just
had
ripped
yeah.
out.
If we had a little like a pigtail that was in some home that you pulled it out and it was available, and when you were gone, it was like sub flush. That seems like that would answer that.
Oh,
Okay.
you know what you could do too? Like if it's right next to where the hinge closes, you could have something that grabs up on the hinge on the wire, so that when you go to close it, it doesn't actually like fully close unless the cable's out. Right? It's kind of like
Oh,
stopping it
yeah.
to kind of pop like this. So be like, oh, why is this? Oh, I left the cable plugged in, and then you unplug it. So you just like
Yeah.
something simple. You just clip onto the wire, and then it just kind of reaches over.
Mhm,
I don't know.
mhm. Yeah, it's like a fail safe where you just can't. I mean, provided that we're not going to get so excited and move it, even though, and just force our way through it and like shear it off. But yeah, okay. All right. So I guess why don't I don't know where we are on time here. Looks like we're about an hour in. How about if what we end up doing is why don't we call tonight's meeting like we'll just do it an hour long meeting, and why don't Silver and Grant start sort of forming like the tasks that we need to figure out and get it to the point that we could start doing some of these, you know, so that we could work on it as a team project, and like hit it hard. Maybe I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the rest of my week looks like, but maybe we could have like a floating meeting. Maybe part of us could start talking about it on Thursday. We could talk, you know, make sure people understand what they are, and people could CAD over the weekend, and then we could reconvene on Tuesday. Something like
Yeah.
that. So we can
And that's where the
start.
Slack huddles come in handy too. Because it's not
Yes,
like we have
yeah.
to set up a whole Zoom meeting. We can just kind of pop in
Right,
and out and be like,
exactly.
oh, hey, I'm CADing part of this button box, and we can talk about that.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds great. That sounds great. All right. Nice. All right. So without objection, anybody else have anything they want to cover tonight? All right. Going once.
Sorry, I have a quick question.
Yeah.
There were like 4 options for what we could do to like fix which one of those are we gonna end up going with? Are we like basing it off the old one or making major changes?
I think it's mostly this one, base it off of the old one, but it's a new one. I mean, I guess there will
Yeah.
be some major changes, but you know, I don't know.
It
What-
kind of
what-
goes in the level of like how much has changed from like everything's new to like mostly nothing.
Right. So
So-
do you think we should work in the same document, or do you think it should be like a completely new document that we just like do everything
We could
from
do a new
scratch?
document where and we can do like derived parts. I think like maybe make it in the same folder, just a new document.
How complicated is your, I mean, if it were up to me, I think I would make a new document. If I were going to derive a part, I would derive it, but only just so I could look at it, but I wouldn't pull off any dimensions or anything on it. You know, I wouldn't let it drive anything. I would just have it be, you know, in there so that we could, you know, see it. But I think this is simple enough that we ought to be able to like make all these things go together. I'd think I'd make it a new document and try not to have it be dependent, even if you do import a part for reference, you know, so that we don't end up having it be together forever. We could have it be its own thing.
That makes sense. So just like based off the old one.
Base it off the old one. I don't know how hard were all those joints to put together. I mean, I don't think it was very.
So it was just a
too
lot of
tricky.
sketching. Like once you get one in, it was just like mirrors, but yeah, it just became tedious. Like I think that was like the longest part was putting in those joints to actually CAD.
So here's what I think would be a nice thing to do then, is if somebody designed it in like where it doesn't have those things in there, and then you make it a task, and some of the new people are like, oh, I've got to put in those teeth. You know what I'm saying? So somebody builds a box and it's, you know, it's got all the parts and they're all interfering with each other, right? And then you just have to, you tell somebody that you got to put in, you know, the features to make it work. And it's a lot of little sketches, but when you're trying to learn CAD, doing a lot of things that I know how to do, like that's A plus, right? I get to build my confidence and I get to learn how to put all those things in, right? So I think if we CAD it, I think we should CAD it in a way that you make easy tasks for people who are starting to know how to CAD can do. And so then you have a task that says like puzzle piece the polycarb, and then somebody who, you know, they don't have to know a whole lot about the subject matter about like, what does this thing really have to do? They just have to know how to drive CAD to make a sketch and do extrudes and fit things together. Okay.
Yep.
So the fact that there are some tedious things is actually almost a feature, right, of this. It's like we're trying to train people into how to do things. So, and then we can also,
That's
yeah,
like part
and
of CAD. There's like just repetitive, monotonous tasks sometimes.
Yeah, right.
But in the end, it's all worth it because like, wow, look at that. That's my finished part. It took a lot, but there it is.
Right. Yes. And so I think we should also try to do things like try to make the model tree make sense. You know, if you end up having like 15 bodies, try to have all the feature for body 1 in one place, you know, body 2 in another place, body 3, you know, try to get all those features together. Have the features in folders. And then there are some features that they depend on each other. So, okay, then you maybe have to go back and now I have, this is 1, 2, and 3, and then I can't really draw what those are, but then here you're going to say, okay, well, I'm going back to 1 and 3, you know, but you kind of try to group them in ways that make sense. So that anyway, just I think we can use this as a way of kind of like teaching CAD hygiene as we're doing it. So yeah. All right. So did that answer your question, Leela? Okay. It's almost time for your rabbit to get fed. Actually, I'm surprised. Like, why is her rabbit is starving? Starving, I say. What's your rabbit's name?
It was Hibiscus. She's laying down, waiting.
All right. A very patient rabbit.
Can I ask an unrelated question?
Yes. Yes, you may.
Are those apples behind you? Pictures of apples?
Yes. So yes. So the
Is that where you get them every week?
these are my bag of apples. You see, this is me. And
They would have the bowl.
so I have a bowl on the weekend. When I go into work, I have a bag. So I cut up my fruit, and then I pick the choicest fruit and I make a plate of it for my wife. And so these are some of the nice looking.
Oh, you made those?
This is how I present it to her every day. And she sometimes takes pictures of them and she posted them on the wall because she thought it would look nice. So yes, it's yes. My medium is art, is fruit. So
That's actually really cool. That's awesome.
Anyway, yeah.
Thanks.
So, all right. So, okay, that's it. I'm going to hit stop. You guys can keep. You can actually, if you wanted to keep the meeting going, you guys could all go into the huddle. I am going to go. I haven't eaten yet, and I'm going to take care of some other things. But anyway, good meeting. I like seeing the initiative on Silver and Grant. Thank you for preparing all this and for doing all the thinking about it. And now let's do it. Excellent final slide. All right.
Have a good night,